This is my journey. Inspired one story at a time, a library of leaders was created. It began as a journey to learn. As time went on, it began to grow. All it needed was a platform, and this podcast was created to listen, to inspire, to share. I am a storyteller, and this is my journey. Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Simone Knego, who is an international speaker, award-winning author, and confidence expert who helps high achievers reconnect with their worth and lead more meaningful lives. Her best-selling book, The Extraordinary UnOrdinary You, and her globally ranked podcast, Her Unshakeable Confidence, which she co-hosts with her daughter, have inspired audiences around the world. A two-time TEDx speaker featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, Entrepreneur, and Yahoo News, Simone is also the creator of the REAL method, REAL, a framework for building lasting confidence from the inside out. Her upcoming book, Real Confidence, launches in February and offers a practical guide to quiet self-doubt and lead with clarity and self-respect. From summiting Mount Kilimanjaro to raising 6 children and navigating the beautiful chaos of everyday life, she brings authenticity, perspective, and heart to everything she does. So, Simone, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So let's just start with a little context, a little bit about where you grew up and kind of some of your early influences and kind of your journey of where you are today.
Yeah. So I grew up in Buffalo, New York. I now live in Sarasota, Florida. Very different. I'm not
Yeah.
not sure how my parents stayed there for so long, but they did. We moved when I was 13 to Florida, actually, to Gainesville. Both my parents were physicians, so that was a big part of my life is watching my mom, really do all the things. She worked full time as a physician. She cooked dinner every night. She made our clothes, and she did it all, which I don't know how she did because I don't even like cooking dinner. So,
Yeah.
and she went to medical school at a time where that was not very common. In 1961, there were 5 women in her class out of 120 people, and so she had to really press her way through for majority of her life. And so that was a big influence on me, really seeing how she achieved what she achieved through, really big obstacles.
Yeah, for sure. Well, she must have been a great role model for you, seeing how it can be done, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. And she still is. She's 86 and, she still does all the things, right?
Yeah.
She's reads multiple books a week and, you know, takes her dog on an hour and a half walk every morning. And I'm like, okay, good job, mom.
Mhm. Okay, and so now what you do is, as we said, you're an author, you're a podcast host, you do keynote speeches. Is this just your own business that you've created by yourself, and do you do some consulting and coaching as well?
So it is something that I created. I actually started off my professional life as a CPA. I have a bachelor's and master's in accounting and, took my CPA exam, passed it, worked for a couple years in it, realized I did not love it. And I
Yeah.
changed my mind many times. Um, I was supposed to be a doctor. That was the goal.
Yeah.
And well, at least my parents' goal. But then I failed organic chemistry and I got a D in it the second time. And I said, okay, well, I don't think that's going to be for me if I can't pass like a regular university class. So I worked as a CPA, I did other things, and then I had my kids, and then realized what I really loved was storytelling and being able to change people's minds with stories and help people realize what they're capable of. Because that was my journey. I struggled with self-doubt for the majority of my life. Didn't think I was making a difference in the world. All of the thoughts, all of the negative thoughts. And then I had, a defining moment that kind of helped me realize what I was capable of. And so that's the goal is to, help people get there quicker than I did, specifically women, but people in general get there quicker than
Yeah.
I did. And yeah, so I coach as well. I would say majority of my business is speaking, but I'm starting new group coaching and I do some one-on-one coaching as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And you said you have six kids, and I believe three are natural and three are adopted, and the ones that are adopted are multi-ethnic and racial children. So it's you have a pretty diverse family.
Yeah, we have, so the oldest three look like my husband and I. We've been married for 32 years. And then we have two children from Ethiopia that are now 21 and 18, and our 19-year-old is from South Korea. So we are chaos, but it's good chaos. And I'm
Yeah.
going to be a grandma, so that's even better.
Holy cow, that's
I
fantastic.
know.
That's I have a 3.5-year-old granddaughter, and oh, it's magic. So be ready. You're gonna love it. So.
That's what I've been told. That's like the best part is that you get to play and then you get to go home.
Yeah. So in with this family and the chaos, as you said, and whatever, but with these the diversity issue and whatever, your eyes have been open to perhaps some of the ugliness and some of the biases and whatever that this country and I guess mankind deals with, and you had to live it through those kids and I'm just wondering. What have you learned from that, or what do you take from that in raising kids that had to deal with those issues?
I think the biggest thing I've taken away is that my role is to be a teacher. So I can judge people all day long if I want to, but that doesn't make anything better. So when people have a comment or a question, my role is to help them understand, you know? I mean, we've had weird questions over the years. We've had weird comments over the years, and I could get really angry about things, or I could say, why would you ask something like that? Or how can I help you understand this better? And I think that has been the biggest thing. And, teaching my kids to be, proud of exactly who they are and to self advocate. And, you know, I would say the third part of that is that most of the time when people have negative things to say, it has nothing to do with you, it has to do with them.
Yeah.
And so, really helping them understand how to move through life when, sometimes the world doesn't want you there and you've got to push your way through.
Do you think some of those comments and some of those experiences, do you think they're just from ignorance, or do you think that, people are just have these deep prejudices that are just hard to explain?
So I would say yes. And so,
Yeah.
majority of people don't know, right? And I think it's very hard to ask a question like that. When you're, for example, when my youngest daughter first came home from Ethiopia, we were at the grocery store and she's sitting in the cart. She was almost 3 years old at the time. And a woman came up to me at the bakery and she said, "How much did you pay for her?" And I said, "Well," and I
Yeah.
could have just like gone off right there, but I didn't. I said, well, first of all, you don't pay for children, but second of all, why would you ask a question like that? And it like disarmed her. Like she was like, "Oh my gosh, what do I say now?" But,
Yeah.
she said, "Well, actually, oh my gosh, I wasn't trying to be rude. My daughter isn't able to have children. She really does want to adopt, but I wanted to see if I could help her with the financial part of it, but I just have no idea what I'm dealing with." So we talked for about 30 minutes actually, and really about educating her about like how to say things, how to ask questions instead of because most people would have like lost it right then and there and been like, get away from me, right? I mean, like, but that's again, I'm supposed to be a teacher. Like that's what I'm here to do is to help other people. But then, there's other stories where my we had a jet ski for a bit and my son that's also from Ethiopia took it out. The first day he took it out, he wasn't 100 yards from the house and he got pulled over. And not only did he have to show his license, and he wasn't doing anything, like literally he's going as slow as can be. Show,
Yeah.
show his license, his boating license. He had to point out the house where he came from, explain that it was his, and he said, I don't even want to do this anymore. And his friends joke about it because they say every time if they go out together on jet skis, he always gets pulled over because he's the one black kid riding a jet ski in Sarasota, Florida. So, it's been really those kinds of things I think are really hard. But at least he can say like, okay, I don't get pulled over speeding because people can't see me, but on the jet ski they can see me right away.
That's just disheartening, but it is real. So yeah, that's hard to go through. So now you said you had a life affirming event, and I think you're
Mm,
probably referring to the Mount Kilimanjaro adventure. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that, why you did that, and what did you gain from it?
yeah. So actually, my husband was asked to do it. A friend of his had climbed it the previous year. He had raised money for the Livestrong Foundation, and they were putting together another team for the following year. And so he called my husband and said, "Would you be interested?" And basically, my husband counted to three and said, "No, thank you. Call Simone." He's like, I'm 6'5". I am not going up at, 19, over 19,000 feet and sleeping in a tent. That's not for me. So his friend called me and said, "What do you think?" And I said, "I think my answer is yes." And for a long time, I called myself the yes girl. I was the people pleaser. I didn't want to disappoint anyone. But this yes was different. This was, I needed to get out of my comfort zone. I knew that I was struggling and that, it didn't matter that I had six kids. I really didn't feel like I was doing things. And so this was the moment that really changed things for me. I didn't have to worry about what anybody else was thinking. I didn't need to compare myself to other people. I had to focus on me, right? I had to believe in myself because, anytime you do any kind of big thing like this, you can train physically, but if you don't train your mind as well to believe that you're capable of doing it, it's very hard to accomplish. So that
Yeah.
was the biggest thing for me is really working on my mind.
And how old were you when you did this?
42.
Okay, so
I'm 53 now, so
you had the kids and everything, and you still were able to find time to train and pull this feat off.
yeah, and that was honestly I got two really interesting pieces of feedback from people that, again, it's how they feel about themselves. It's really not directed towards me. The first one was, "Do you really think you're going to make it to the top?" And I know I'm not a climber. I mean, I live in Florida. I have 16 steps in my house, right? I mean, I've gone camping twice. So definitely out of my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
But oh no, I think I'm going to make it halfway. That's why I'm doing it. Like it was always interesting to hear people's take on things. And I think that one was really, they couldn't see themselves doing it. So why should I be able to do it? And then the second one was, don't you think it's really selfish that you're going to leave your family behind to go climb a mountain, especially because you're not a climber? I mean, what if something happens? And oh my gosh, your husband is so nice. He is going to take care of your kids while you're gone. I was like, oh my gosh, they're his kids too.
Yeah, yeah. Uh,
So it's been really interesting to kind of hear different perspectives on things. But, you know, it was taking the action that really made the difference for me. And, it was 16 of us, didn't know anybody on the team. Not only did we hike together, I also had a tent mate. So I'm sleeping in a tent with someone that I didn't know. She was fantastic. So it turned out to be great. But, it's really getting out of your comfort zone that really, I truly believe that that's where change happens when you're not in control of all the things, but you're in control of how you respond to the things.
yeah. I think that's a really good message too, that when people say things or judge you or whatever, it's so easy to get defensive and get offended and whatever. But I think what you said makes a lot of sense, is if you can just have the mindset that it's more about them than about you, that kind of changes how you deal with stuff.
Yeah, and my response is come with me, right? Like why
Yeah.
not? Come with me. And with anything that I do now and that also, throws people off. They're like, "What? No." And but I think it's important to say that because maybe then they can see themselves, you know, doing something differently. Like, "Oh wait, I don't know. Could I do that?" Yes, you can. You can absolutely do it if you want to. You have to ask yourself what you want.
And it sounds like you made it to the summit, and did all 16 people
Yeah.
make it? Okay.
All 16 of us made it. And, there were some really difficult moments. One of the women on the trip, she really started struggling with her breathing. She was actually a marathon runner, but she started getting this horrible cough. And so she had to slow down. And that was one of the things that we talked about. Leadership on a mountain is way different than leadership in the boardroom. So if everybody can't go, do we all stay behind? Does everybody slow down? How do we deal with it? And of course, nobody wants to be that person if they can't make it, that nobody gets to make it.
Right.
So, I mean, the decision was that one of the other guys on the trip who was young and super fit, so he went slower with her so that she could make it. And then there were also a couple of guides with her as well. But in the end, everybody did make it. And it was amazing to, the accomplishment, but also it's the idea of, yes, I can do things, right? I can do hard things when I set the goal and put in the work. I think, so often we talk about New Year's resolutions, which I don't believe in, but the idea of if you want to do something, do it today, right? But that so many people set goals like that are huge instead of taking those baby steps to then move them forward to the next goal. And, it's really all about putting in the work.
So what, walking down the mountain, hiking down the mountain, and then your next days in civilization back to where you're from, what is your aha moment? What is it that what are you thinking now that you didn't think before, and how did that change the way you look at the world?
I'm capable of much more than I ever thought I was. So that would be the first thing. Also, I don't need to worry about what anybody else is thinking. Like, I know I'm a good human being. I know I'm doing good things in the world, and stop worrying about what anybody else is thinking and stop comparing myself to other people, right? I mean, this, especially the younger generation below us, they're so focused on social media and what everybody else is doing, and it doesn't get you anywhere. You're spending so much time comparing yourself to other people. They don't even know you're comparing yourself to them. Like, they have no say in it. You're doing it and you're making yourself feel bad about it. And I did that for years. And for me, it's not about that. It's about living my best life.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you've done two TED Talks, as we said in the bio, and the first one was kind of how do you talk to kids, and you talk about the biases and those things early on. Why wait, and why avoid it? Like sometimes it's easy to say, well, let's not talk about it, but that's not how kids learn, and that's not how they form their opinions and attitudes.
Yeah, I mean, it's true about everything we do. I mean, with the work that I do now on helping people build confidence, it like, why is that taboo? Like, why can't we say, like, I'm struggling, right? I mean, people don't want to say they're struggling because they think that's a weakness. Everybody struggles. There's not one person I know that doesn't struggle. So when we were talking about bias, like, I want my kids to be able to self-advocate. I want them to understand that it's not about them, right? That it's really helping educate other people. And there are going to be people that are going to have nasty comments, and you have to be proud of yourself and own it and not worry about what anybody else has to say to you.
And I think one thing I picked up on that too was it became popular for people to say, "Oh, well, I don't see color, I
Mm.
just see people." And you're promoting that that's not how you should look at it. You should celebrate the differences and look at color as being different, but not to say I don't see it.
Yeah, if you say you don't see color, you basically erase so much of history, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so many things that happened in history were because of color, good or bad. And, it's really about looking at the individual. And, if you're an advocate for someone, amazing. But it's not because you don't see that they're different than you. You embrace that they are different than you. And that's what you're there for. That's what our world is about. I mean, there's not one of us that's the same as the other.
And I think the other thing too that I take from that, like during the Black Lives Matter, time when all we were learning and people are saying things, I think people were afraid to say the wrong thing. So
Mm.
the opposite of that also is silence is deafening. So if you say nothing and you're afraid to say anything, then that almost speaks more volume. So the willingness to maybe say some things or have some discussions, even if it's wrong or even if it comes out like you hoped it wouldn't, but it did, but you can learn from that experience. That's how we move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm going to say things wrong. And a lot of times I'll preface it that I don't know what the right thing to say is here, but here's what I want to say. Teach me, help me learn how I can say it better. Because yeah, you're right. If I stay silent, nothing changes.
Yeah.
And, we see that a lot these days that it's scary to speak up, but you have to. You have to use your voice because otherwise nothing ever changes in the right way.
So this unconscious bias that we all have is probably one of the hardest things to kind of overcome. And I know that you're a confidence expert and so on, but learning how to deal with these unconscious biases. First of all, anyone who doesn't think they have any is really really clueless. We all have them, but how do we break down that? Is that just talking about it and being willing to make a mistake and learn from it? Is that how we get over that?
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to unconscious bias, absolutely. You first have to become aware of it, right? I
Yeah.
mean, that I think is the thing that really holds people back. Oh no, I'm not prejudiced, or oh no, I'm not, I respect everybody. And but then 2 seconds later, you're making a joke about, some specific group, and like that's not okay, right? So
Yeah.
I think that is, we have a friend actually who they were very religious, and their son, when he was in college, came out to them, and basically the church dumped them. Like they were completely left behind, and they had to make the choice. Like, do we stay with the church? Do we stay with our son? And they chose to stay with their son. But before that, the dad would make, kind of disparaging jokes before he knew about his son. He would make what he thought was like funny jokes. And they weren't funny to people who, were gay, and so that completely changed everything for him. And it shouldn't have to take a personal experience like that for us to understand that people have feelings and we don't need to be cruel or whatever. And a joke isn't always just a joke. But, so it's been interesting to kind of watch that transformation. And it really makes you think about, like, okay, what's important and how do we talk about things? But if you don't talk about things, you can't move forward. Like, you have to understand that you have to be willing to make a mistake. You have to be, I mean, you have to be willing to fail at things. You have to be willing to ask for help so that we can move forward.
And I think in one of your talks, or maybe it's in part of your coaching, you have what's called TALK, which is an acronym, TALK. So just cover that quickly, what that is, and what you're trying to get with that idea.
Yeah, I mean, so really what I'm trying to get with that idea is the importance of talking about things. And it's so interesting because I would say most people don't like to do that. It gets very uncomfortable to, say anything about differences. I'll even have it with when the kids were little, with close friends of ours, were really worried about saying the wrong thing. And I'm like, say the wrong thing. I say the wrong thing all the time. But if we don't talk to each other about it, then nothing's going to change. And but it's even my close friends were so worried about saying the wrong thing.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things that just yeah, you don't want to offend somebody, and you don't want to get offended, and we're all a little too sensitive sometimes. I'm the first one to admit I can be sensitive sometimes, and so when somebody says something, it's just like, you know, it's hard to not become hurt or offended. Yet on the other hand, as we go back to what you said earlier, if you can have a mindset of, well, maybe it's not about me, maybe it's about them, or maybe it's about something else, it helps you see it a little clearer.
Yeah, and also I think that the idea that we know everything, and I mean, when I was younger, I remember that my parents would agree to disagree on things.
Yeah,
But it doesn't seem like we do that anymore. If we disagree with you, we don't hang out with you, right?
yeah.
And I think that's a big a huge problem. But also when we're, talking about, oh, let's talk about this directly, it just makes people uncomfortable. And people don't like to be uncomfortable. But the problem is growth doesn't happen unless you get uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's we've talked about this many times in this show before, where the brain or the human experience is always trying to be comfortable, and it just doesn't work. I mean, you need to be uncomfortable, as you said, to learn, and most of what we do in our life isn't 100% comfortable. And in fact, if it was, we probably wouldn't be doing anything, right? We'd just be sitting around, um, sitting on the couch and doing nothing.
Yeah, and trust me, there's days that I would like to do that, but I know that nothing happens when I do that. So it's interesting because people say, "Oh, it's scary to get uncomfortable." Like I have a fear of getting uncomfortable. And my response is, I actually have a fear of being too comfortable because it means that I'm not growing, I'm not looking for new things, I'm not challenging myself. So That's a big mindset shift for me to say, like, I'm gonna do the uncomfortable things now because being comfortable is like saying, well, I'm never gonna do anything different in my life, and this is as good as it gets.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about your podcast a little bit. It's called say it again. I just
Her unshakable
Her
confidence.
Unshakable Confidence, and you do that with your daughter.
Yeah.
So how long have you two been doing that, and how old is she?
Yeah, so we've been doing that for 2.5 years already. I keep on
Okay.
saying 2 years, but it's like 2.5 years. She's 22.
Okay.
Nope, she's 23. See, I missed half a year. There we go.
Yeah.
Um, she is a second year law student at Belmont University. And we started it, like, it started first because we have these really ridiculous conversations. And we were like, why don't we record them? But it started as Instagram lives. And then we're like, let's go all in. And it's kind of been life changing, not kind of, it's been life changing for both of us. So we talk about the things that we struggle with. We talk about, other things that can help. I mean, it's specifically really for women, although lots of men listen to it, which is interesting. But the goal was to help her build confidence quicker than I did. Because understanding that confidence is a skill that you build like any other skill, it's not something you have or you don't, it's not something made for other people. And so that was the goal of when we started it because she was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when she was 16 and it changed a lot of things for her. But we had a moment where I said to her, you know, you have to feel all the feels, like get mad, cry, whatever you need to do, and then pick a day and move forward because you can get stuck here forever if you want to. You can stuck being miserable about this, or we can figure out how you're going to live really well with it. So, and kind of that started the whole idea behind it because so much of what we do in life, it takes confidence. And we are at a confidence crisis right now. Like people feel very uncomfortable at work. I mean, definitely there's a confidence crisis at work. And so really helping people understand that it's a skill, just like going to the gym and building muscle. You're building muscle memory with your brain.
Well, you know her very well, obviously, but does she still surprise you sometimes with her perspective or what she says when you're having those conversations?
Yeah, she calls me out, which is really good, right? I'll say something. She goes, "That is so not true," or "You are wrong." Like, I'm like, "Okay, tell me."
Yeah.
Actually, we were talking about the being comfortable, or being uncomfortable, and when I tried to explain to her that I'm much more uncomfortable in that comfortable state because I know that I'm not growing, she was like, "Oh, that's an aha moment for me. I never would have thought about it like that." So it is really fun to see that, like the things that she says sometimes, and or the moments she has after an episode. We had a woman on who she her husband had cheated on her with someone at work, and Olivia's texting me, "Divorce him, divorce him, divorce him," and
Yeah.
we went through this whole episode, and the woman explained like how part of it, again, I don't want to get through the whole thing, but so
Right.
it really changed Olivia's mind during that episode. She goes, I would have never thought about it like that. I would have never like taken any responsibility for anything. And she was like, that was so interesting to me because that opened my eyes to other people's relationships where I've seen them stay together and just couldn't understand it. So, I think like all of these different kind of episodes we do have been really good for both of us in terms of mental health and growth.
Have you ever been on an episode where you got pissed at each other, or it just kind of like you don't want to have a fight on stage, so to speak, but have you ever gotten there, or do you work it out pretty well?
No, I think we work it out pretty well. I mean, we typically don't fight at all, honestly. I mean, maybe it would be more exciting if we do, but
Yeah.
but because a lot of times when she says things and I'm like, oh, wait, I didn't see it that way until you said it like that, then it's more of an aha moment for me too. But like we were doing an episode one day talking about anxiety. And I was like, oh, I don't have anxiety. I just get nervous about stuff. She's like, oh my God, Mom, your anxiety gives me anxiety. And I was like, wait,
Yeah.
what? And so that was really important for me to hear because I could have been defensive and say, I don't have anxiety, but I was like, you know what? You're not wrong. She started listing all the things. I was like, oh, wait, I never saw it like that before. So we have a really fun relationship, and yeah, usually don't get into any kind of fighting. Not because we say we won't, but just it just has never gone there.
So she's 23 years old, as you just said. Is she more confident at 23 than you were at 23?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Like she'll walk into a room and have no issues. In law school, they get called all the time to stand up and speak in class. And someone actually said to her, how are you so confident every time you stand up? And she's like, oh, I have a podcast with my mom.
Yeah.
I have to think on my feet all the time. And I thought that was great, you know. So not saying everybody should go do a podcast, but I think it really has been good for her to and hear other people's perspectives as well. So really, but
Yeah.
yeah, when I got married at 21, had my first kid at 24, and was I confident? No, I was clueless. That's what I was. So it's nice to see her, really stepping into her own. And I see that with the other kids too, even though they're not on the podcast. But I think that modeling as a parent to like, if I see something I want to do, I do it. And I think that's so important for them to see so that they feel comfortable stepping out there as well.
So when you look back on it, I'm just curious as to you talked about your mother and father and how you respect them, admire them, and they did these great things. But could you say that the parenting style then was very different, and you probably didn't have that level of depth talks with your parents like you do with your kids now?
Yeah, 100%. So, with my parents, I mean, again, they're great parents, but a very different time. It was the what will other people think time,
Yeah,
right? Everything that I did, and I did really stupid stuff, but what will other people think? I'm like, I don't know what they would think. Like, and why would I care what they think?
yeah.
And so it was more of a kind of, I don't want to say shame parenting because, again, they were good parents, but it was more of a, you know, worry about everything else. Don't worry about yourself. I mean, I can tell you, like, part of, and I think we'll probably get into this, but, the method that I teach today starts with self respect. And I remember as a child being taught to respect my elders, my peers, but never once do I remember being taught that the most important person to respect was myself.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big miss. And it's interesting, even parents today, when I talk to them about this, they're like, oh my gosh, I haven't thought about it that way, right? We're always saying, oh, give so and so a hug or, make sure you respect your teacher. But the problem is there are situations where we have to be able to stand up for ourselves and we're not taught to do that always.
It's interesting when you think back with my parents. I mean, it was very much fairly command and control, authoritarian. I mean, you did what your dad said, and you didn't ask any questions.
Mm,
Yet I grew up in an era where somehow I got the message to question authority.
mm.
So it was, there was a tug and pull there because, my dad, he wanted us to do, what he said we should do and whatever. And when you questioned that or questioned authority or whatever, that was a little taboo. But I just think it's interesting the dynamic and how generations change in that way.
Yeah, I mean, it was be seen but not heard. I mean, that was a
Yeah.
big part of it when I was really little. And then I grew up and I did kind of push away from stuff. I mean, I had a horrible high school experience and that kind of, I had an abusive boyfriend in high school and um my parent I was not open with them. Like I was not open about any of it. And I remember coming home with a black eye one day and of course lying about how it happened. And my parents didn't know what to do, right? They were like, what do we do? And it was kind of after the fact that it was a conversation, but it wasn't something that we talked about. Like it was just very hush hush. Don't let people know. That's shameful, and move on.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about your method. It's called the
Mm.
REAL method. Again, another acronym. So the R of REAL stands for respect. So tell us about the others and kind of how you use that in your coaching today.
Yeah. Okay. So respect yourself, embrace your failures, ask yourself what you want, and live without limits. So we talked about respect yourself, but embracing failures, again, I think society has conditioned us that to fear failure. But failure is part of success. We have to look at it differently, right? I mean, the most successful people didn't get everything right on day one. They failed multiple times and they were willing to take risks. But we're so afraid of what will other people think okay, who cares what anybody else thinks? Like, do what's right for you. And I mean, I failed at many things, and it's the standing back up that really matters. But again, we have been told that failing is not okay. Yes, you have to fail. My youngest two children had a first grade teacher who celebrated failure. And I actually write about her in my first book. But basically, when the kids would come up to the board to work on a problem, whatever they were working on, it didn't matter if they got it right or they got it wrong. They would all clap. Because as soon as you're told you did it wrong, go sit back down,
Yeah.
what happens? They don't want to raise their hand anymore. They don't want to come up to the board anymore. So she celebrated it. So they understood that failure was part of learning. Like you have to make mistakes to move forward. And if you're so afraid of making mistakes, you're not going to move forward.
Every leadership program there is and every leadership guru there is talks about failure, and we learn more from our failures than our successes. And we talk about failure all the time. Yet it's something that's so hard for people to accept. It's just like nobody wants to fail. And so if you go in with that, again, that mindset, it's just you're not going to take as many chances. You're not going to spread your wings as far as you should probably. And that limits your potential.
Yeah. I mean, tell me what you're going to fail at today. And that tells me that you're actually doing things, right? I mean, there's things that I fail. I'm trying to think of what I failed at yet today, but sending text messages with the wrong words in there. I'm like, okay, that was not English. I'm supposed to be a writer. Okay, sorry about that. That was a fail. Let me rewrite that. But,
Yeah,
again, you got to ask for things. One of the things I always say to my kids is that if you don't ask, you'll never know, or the answer is always no. So put yourself out there because what's the worst that's going to happen? No, sorry, can't help you. No, sorry, you don't get that job, whatever it is. But, so what? You fail, you try again.
for sure. One of my mottos is, I'm never afraid to ask the question, so, that's something to live by. But, just taking those chances, like I can remember, we're kind of a skiing family, and it was funny because like one time he came in, yeah, it was a great, great day on the slopes today. I didn't fall once. And then I think my son said, well, if you're not falling, you're not improving.
Mm,
You should push it a little
yes.
further and go down a couple times. And at my age, that's not quite the good best strategy. You don't want to get down on the ground. But
No,
anyway,
I agree. I had shoulder surgery 4 months ago, and I don't want to fall at anything. That was the one thing the doctor said to me. You're not going to mess it up unless you fall down. So I'm like walking, looking at the ground. The kids are like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I am not going to fall down."
I saw that you stated, and it might have been one of your TED Talks or some of your writings, that 80% of people struggle with self-esteem. That's just kind of mind-boggling if you think of that.
Yeah, it's crazy, but talk to someone and ask them, and they'll be like, "Oh no, I'm fine." Okay, tell me what you're struggling with. And what you really uncover is that we all struggle with confidence. Like we really struggle to feel good about ourselves. And it might not be across the board. It might be in certain areas of our life. I mean, parenting is one that will, knock the wind out of you, right?
Yeah.
You for 1 second you think you have it all together and the next second it's like all out there like a garage sale, right? So it's understanding that there are just moments that are going to be really tough and you can't let those moments beat you down.
And as a parent or now a grandparent, we see these little kids that have so much confidence and they're just exploring the world and trying all these things. They have so much confidence, and it's frightening to think who's going to knock them down? Who's going to tell them that they're not good enough, or who's going to do something? It's kind of frightening.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back, you will find moments in your life that will tell you the things that you struggle with. I mean, I mentioned the abusive boyfriend story. I also had a teacher. I mean, I have a lot of it probably was teachers. I had a teacher in um, middle school or actually end of elementary school, that basically told me that I sucked at writing, and I believed that for years. Right? I mean, I'm like, I'm not going to do writing in school. No way. I'm horrible at it. And did I ever like explore that? No, not until I started writing my first book and I was like, what was she talking about? I'm a good writer. But, that idea stuck with me. I mean, I'm 53 years old and I still remember the moment where she told me that I was not a good writer and that I should, get someone else to help me because I sucked at it. And I was like, okay, great. But I think that's true about so many things in our lives that we all have, life beats you down. And we take it all so personally instead of like, that might have been her opinion, but that's not true, right? So it's really how we talk to ourselves that matters the most.
Yeah, for sure. Tell us a little bit, I don't want to be a psychoanalyst here on yourself, but talked a little bit about you also said that you went through this period where you felt like no matter what you did or how accomplished you were or what you did, you just felt like it was never good enough.
Mm. Yeah. I mean,
So what,
imposter syndrome to the max. So whether you believe in
yeah.
imposter syndrome or not, it is so much of how we walk through our lives that we credit other people for the work that's being done or the accomplishments that we have, or we don't even see our accomplishments as accomplishments. I mean, raising six kids is no small feat, but for a period of time, I wasn't working. So I'm like, well, okay, am I really doing anything if I'm not working? Okay, the most important job in the world is raising good humans. Hard stop. Like, literally, that is what's going to change our world is raising good humans. But we get these ideas in our mind of what's good enough and what's not. I was sitting at an event one night and I was seated next to a woman who was a CEO of some company. I don't remember what it was, but, and of course the small talk began and she asked me what I did. And I said, oh, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. And she said, oh, I can't imagine anything worse. I was like, oh my God. Okay, there we go. So I was already feeling like crap about myself. Thank you for adding on to the pile. And, but that's how I would talk about myself back then. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just Rob's wife. I'm just a volunteer, really justifying my existence with the words that I used. And that's what I believed, which is so ridiculous. And, I look back now and say that was wasted, like wasted time to ever think like that. So if you're listening to this, like start talking to yourself like you would your best friend. We say things to ourselves that we would never say to our best friend, right? But we'll say it to ourselves all the time. You have to live with yourself forever. Be your own best friend, right? Talk yourself up. Be your own hype girl, whatever it is. Like, really, it's so important how what we say about ourselves, what we say to ourselves. And I was just not kind to myself. And it really took that. And part of it too is I thought I was alone in my struggles. I thought everybody else has the perfect life and I'm the only one who sucks, right? And the more I started talking, especially to other women, the more I realized, oh, wait, no, I'm not. Everybody struggles. They look perfect on paper. They are not. They're having like more problems than I am. So, like, give yourself a break.
What what's some of the most common themes that you address on the podcast? What seems to keep coming up and that people are interested in and you keep talking about?
Mm. People love to hear about other people's struggles. So, and it's interesting because no matter what guest we have come on, they'll tell us a story like wasn't what we had planned and a completely life-changing story. For example, we had a woman on the other day and she created a business like within 6 years, she has her own line of fabrics and it's like huge. She has like 30 employees now. Like it's crazy in 6 years. That's what we were talking about. But what we found out was that her husband had this really rare form of cancer that nobody had ever survived it before. Now he was diagnosed 16 years ago and he's cancer free. Like, so that whole story blew our minds. But, I think from the outside, people don't know what anybody else goes through. So it's kind of like finding those hidden stories in our conversations of like, okay, what happened in your life that made the biggest change for you? And I think that's always fascinating to see how people have built their lives.
One of the questions I asked that I'm just about to ask you is, what haven't I asked you, or what part of your story haven't we got into that you want to share? And the reason I asked that question is because, I'd been doing this podcast for a while, and we hit the stop record, and I said, how'd that go? He says, good. I said, is there anything we left out? And he goes, well, we didn't get into that when I was in high school, my mom and my two other siblings, I spent my whole high school career in a homeless shelter. And I'm like, oh God, let's turn record back on. I mean, that's part of the story, right? So
Right.
sometimes, we look at the other people and we see their lives and think it's perfect and whatever. And so I guess what you're saying is it gives us more confidence or at least some comfort that, we're not the only ones going through this, that somehow that helps us see see that we can overcome some of the issues we have.
Yeah, and it's not looking at people and saying, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm glad they're struggling too." It's not that at all. It's
Yeah.
more of understanding that we are not alone and that what we see over to our left or to our right, there's no perfection involved in any of that. So it's really kind of reframing our story to be proud of exactly who we are instead of trying to be like everyone else. And again, because when you really get down and talk to everyone else, they have their own issues. And do you want more? No, I don't.
Yeah, for sure. So, in anticipation of our discussion today, what haven't I asked you, or what haven't we covered that you'd like to get into the program today?
Hmm. We covered a lot, but I'll say one thing about so when I was in my 30s, I decided that I wanted to start doing triathlons. And so I started running and biking and swimming. I didn't know how to swim. When I was a little kid, I had ear infections. And so I had these ear molds. So the only way I was allowed to swim was with my head out of the pool. So I never learned how to freestyle swim. And so I learned that when I was 30 and actually became quite good at it. Now that I have a shoulder injury, forget about it. But,
Yeah.
the whole reason of telling this. So I'm training, training, training. And then I pushed myself too hard. And I ended up having knee surgery, got a complication from the knee surgery, and never been the same. Like I can't run. We just were at a theme park this weekend, and my knee is like a balloon still. But even with that, I still do the things. Like I climbed Kilimanjaro even with the injury that I had, knowing that it was going to be that much harder. On the way back down, basically, we're done, right? We're done with the climb. Everybody is ready to get back to camp. And I had to go really slow because I was almost like peg legging it because my knee was so swollen. And one of the guides hung back with me and said, "Are you sure you don't want to take a vehicle back in?" I'm like, no, I've made it this far. I'm not getting on anything right now." And he said, "Okay, well, I'll walk with you." And we're walking, and the way Kilimanjaro is, you start like in a tropical rainforest and go all the way up to glacier, so different climate zones. And we're walking through this area, and he said, "You know what? Usually when we get here, we are racing to get back to camp. We are not thinking about anything else. We're just thinking about, okay, we're done." He goes, "I never noticed there were monkeys here before." He goes, "There are monkeys everywhere." So
Yeah.
it's that change of perspective of when we think that things are really tough, that to look around us and show some gratitude. So I have 5 million stories I could tell you, but I think that one was one that really impacted me as well because here I'm feeling bad. He's got to stay back with me. And then he's like, "Thank you. I never would have seen it like this before."
So what's the future look like for you? You're doing a lot of great things as we've heard, and you're writing and speaking and coaching, and is you just continue to do more of that? What do you look forward to in the next 3 to 5 years with
Yeah.
what you're doing?
Yeah, so I have my new book comes out. I don't know when this episode comes out, but my book comes out on February 17th, which is called Real Confidence, A Simple Guide to Go from Unsure to Unshakable, all about using my real method. I'm going to be a grandmother. I mean, how amazing is that? I'm going to be a grandmother and an empty nester in the same year. So my youngest will go off to college in the fall. And yeah, I mean, speaking, writing, and helping other people get there quicker than I did, and really help them realize what they're capable of, because we are all capable of amazing things, but we it starts with us. It starts looking internally and, believing in ourselves.
At this time of the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question, and that question is in relation to leadership. What is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
Mm. So I have a concept of leadership that I like to call kitchen table leadership. So, we've been sold this narrow view of what leadership is. It's the boardroom, it's the corner office, it's the title. And I believe that leadership, it's the choices we make every day, the messy moments, the behind the scenes, the things we don't ever get recognized for. But nobody has ever called that leadership, so we don't see it as that. So many of our major decisions happen around the kitchen table. The choices you make every day, those are leadership decisions. Think about if you didn't make that choice, what would have happened? Probably something. So I encourage people to see leadership differently, that you don't need the title to lead. You need to start from exactly where you are.
It's a great message. And sometimes in business too, we teach like, lead from any level. So some of the best leaders around are those lower level employees who just know how to get things done and how to work with a team and how to be a good team member and how to move forward. And it doesn't mean, like you said, that they're in the boardroom making all the strategic decisions, but they're just, doing their part at where they are and making a decision of what can I do to help the team move forward. And I think companies that embrace that and cultivate that really do better in the long run.
Yeah. And believing that you're a leader, you show up differently. But if you believe that leadership is for everybody else, you're not going to make those decisions, right? So, really changing that belief about yourself, saying, yeah, I'm leading from exactly where I am, you definitely will show up differently into any role in your life.
For sure. Well, Simone, this has been a great discussion. Thanks for being on the show today. I've learned a lot, and it sounds like you're doing great things and just addressing something that I would say that just about everyone has and deals with, but isn't often talked about. So you definitely found a niche here that's meaningful and impactful. So good for you to keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Okay, well, take care, and this will be released after the holidays, but we're recording it right before the holidays. So happy holidays to you and your family, and maybe we'll run into each other down the road one of these days.
Sounds great.
Take care. Bye bye. Thank you for listening to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. To listen to all my interviews, subscribe to Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and many other popular podcast platforms. Some of these interviews are on video, and you can search YouTube for Profiles in Leadership with Steve Anderson. You can also access the entire library of interviews on my website, orange.coaching.com, and that is orangetheword.coaching.com, and go to the Media Center and click on Podcasts or Video Gallery. You can also enter the website from pilpodcast.com.